All, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining our Ask the Experts session this morning. You see on your screen in front of you a whole range of expertise, although they get very nervous when I keep singling them out and saying they have all the answers. Of course, we have as many answers as are available at the moment, which I think we're all probably starting to recognise is the way things are. So good morning, my name is Tudor Price. I'm the Deputy Chief Exec here at the Kent and Victor Chamber of Commerce. I also look after the Kent and Medway Growth Hub, which is a free business support service, which is sort of running under a contract with KCC at the moment. So this is a series of events that we've been running over the last few months now, trying to help you, the businesses of Kent and Medway, navigate the challenges that we all face under the recent trade deal with the EU. Lots of press and publicity out there, of course, which is interesting, but actually what we all want to know is, what does it do for me? How does it affect me? What do I need to do now? So it's the specifics, and that's fine. That's what we're here to do. So we're not going to bore you with sort of lengthy presentations, because actually you've already submitted a number of questions, and this is really about trying to make sure that the information that we give you is tailored to you. So there'll be an opportunity to ask things. Just some housekeeping. Obviously, we're going to be recording this. Just ask you just to keep your microphones muted while we're sort of going through the session, and if we need you to expand on a question you submitted, or there is a question that you haven't asked, I'll invite you to unmute and come online to be able to ask that question yourself. In the live chat, we will be posting some important numbers and links. This recording will be made available to you, of course, after the event. And we'll post the link into the live chat so you know where to find that later on. The questions we have about 15, 20 questions already. We're going to sort of try and break those up and go through them in detail. If you need further clarification on the point that we're answering, or there is a question which hasn't been asked yet, by all means, whack it into the live chat there, and I will do my best to try and bring that into the mix as well. But that's it in terms of the housekeeping and the rules. I am now going to invite our experts just to introduce themselves. So ladies first. So Sue.
Sorry, I was muted. Usual story.
Yes, okay.
Hi, everybody. What a pleasure to be here again, talking to you about all things VAT and customs duty wise. There's lots of questions, some really good questions. And obviously, you know where we are as well if you need help, as Tudor said. So really pleased to be here. Thanks, Tudor.
Super. Thank you very much indeed, Sue. Graham.
Thank you, Tudor. Good morning, and good morning, everyone. Graham Card. I'm the Kent and Victor Chamber of Commerce International Trade contact, really. That, broadly speaking, the way I'd sum it up is, if you've got an international trade question, the Chamber will always be looking to help. And then as a fallback, or if further investigation is required, they refer out to me to help out. I've got a few years experience in trade, and it's something which I love and enjoy. And usually the great thing about it is it's usually a case of spending time understanding the individual importers or exporters modus operandi, and maybe making some tweaks or making some changes as appropriate. So yeah, looking forward to discussing one or two things this morning. Thank you, Tudor.
Graham, thank you very much indeed. Excellent. And finally, Nathan.
Thank you, Tudor. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nathan Martin. I'm the Principal Trading Standards Officer for Food and Commercial Services at Kent County Council Trading Standards. Been doing the job about 20 years. Most of the time of that was in enforcement, but the last 5 years or so I've transitioned, and now I spend all of my time giving advice to businesses. So we're a team that is definitely on the side of the business. In my free time, if such a thing exists, I also write guidance notes for the Business Companion website, which I highly recommend people to check out. My particular area of expertise is food standards, but we do provide a wide range of advice. If I can't do it, then one of the rest of the team can. Thank you very much.
Nathan, thank you very much. And whenever you say in your free time, I think you're going to launch into, hi, my name's Nathan, I'm a Pisces, I like taking walks in the rain. But that's excellent. I make light. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, our panel of experts. They've been working hard for us over the last few weeks, months even, trying to sort of get to the bottom of some of the legislation. And bearing in mind, some of this detail still hasn't been published even today. There are still questions which are unanswered by government, and so we will be as stuck as you are in some cases. But most of the time we've been able to sort of get to the bottom of things, so we can help you here today. A couple of things to bear in mind. First of all, there is a free telephone helpline that you can access. It's called the Growth Hub, and it is the business support helpline, and the magic phone number is 03333 602 300. Now you can contact them. They will arrange a call back from one of these experts here in the room. So if you needed to have a little bit more of a detailed conversation, you are more than welcome to put the call in and ask for a call back, and a time and the slot will be booked for you. It is capped. There's only a certain amount of free advice, between 3 and 4 hours free advice. After that, you will need to turn to the private sector. However, as chance would have it, yesterday sees the launch of the EU transition grant. So there is now a grant available of up to £2,000 for businesses to be able to pay for training and or EU transition specific advice. So whilst we have a cap on the free advice provided through the Growth Hub, don't fear, there is now additional funding, but you just have to go through a bit of an application process. At the Growth Hub at the Chamber, we will be able to help you go through that application process. It's very, very straightforward. I will quickly show you what it looks like. So I'm just going to share my screen, Molly, bear with me. That one there. Okay, so that's what it looks like. It's the SME Brexit Support Fund. There's a couple of things to note. It's all online, which is great. It's being managed by PwC. Okay. There are grants of up to £2,000, and it comes in 2 grants. One is for training, and the other is professional advice. Now, the experts you have in front of you today will be able to provide advice under these headings here. Okay. Customs, excise, import, safety, security declaration requirements. Now, we are confident that the labelling and the regulation side of things is also something we believe to be covered as well. So you can use it for all of the experts that sat in front of you this morning. It's a very, very simple process. You go online, you fill in your bits and pieces, you put in the quote, they then authorize it, and then you go and get the work done, and then you provide evidence of expenditure, and then they pay you out. Very, very straightforward. So training and professional advice, and of course the Chamber has training programs, and of course your expertise are here in front of you. So the other thing to make a note of is that the grant scheme closes, and it doesn't say on this particular page, which is frustrating, but the end of June. End of June, so don't leave it too long, please. What you can do, and my advice is to get your application in, get it approved, and then sit on it for a little while until you need to draw it down. Okay, that's probably the best way to get in there, because these things are always a case of it'll be done by the end of June or until this fund has run dry. So get in early. Okay, if you need help, you can give us a call, 03333 602 300. That's enough waffling on from me. Now we're going to get down to the meat and bones of what it is that you want to know about here today. So on to our questions. First question in front of me here is from Andrea Vass from Click Travel Photo Tours. Andrea, I can see you're on my screen here already, so you're first on the list. Excellent. So a question is, our company runs photography tours and workshops outside of the UK. Historically, these took place outside of the EU, but we are looking to add workshops in some EU countries. What are our tax obligations, especially in what regards VAT, if we run a photography workshop in an EU country? The sale would happen in the UK, but the service would be provided in the destination country. Please note that we do not sell package holidays in the sense of including flights and accommodation, but we do package our tutoring services with accommodation most of the times. Now, I spotted VAT, so straight away I thought, oh, Sue, that's got to be a bag for you. And in terms of moving around the country's representation, I thought maybe Nathan. So I'm going to go for Sue first and then come across to Nathan. Sue.
Yeah, sure. So this is an interesting question because it raises a number of issues, not least something that everybody in VAT is frightened of, which is called the tour operators margin scheme. If you buy in and sell on accommodation or flights or travel type services, then you fall under this scheme and you have to pay VAT on the margin rather than claiming back your VAT on your purchases and paying it on your sales. Now, you might not think you're a tour operator, but if you're buying in and selling on accommodation, you are, and you will fall under that scheme. The margin, the rules have just changed with Brexit. So actually, if you're the courses that you're running with accommodation are outside of the UK, then actually you won't pay any VAT at all on the margin. It's only within the UK now, holidays, packages, accommodation, etc., that will be taxed on the margin at 20%, 5% at the moment, because we have that special rate. So number one, you need to think about that and about how you're going to handle the tour operators margin scheme. The other thing is that the actual courses themselves, so the training or workshop, etc., that you're providing won't be part of the tour operators margin scheme, and VAT will be due on that separately. So it's like a supply that you're making in-house. So it's quite complicated, the VAT liability of that. I don't think you would have to register for VAT in the countries where you are providing those tours and workshops, but you need to be very careful of Germany because they have said that they require non-EU businesses that are buying and selling travel type services to register for VAT. So be careful of Germany, but if you're holding them in, for example, Spain or France, then you won't have to register in those countries for VAT there. You'll do it all through your UK VAT registration. So quite complicated there, how that's dealt with from a VAT point of view.
Excellent. Yeah, a very complex one all to get us started there, Andrea. Thank you. Nathan, did you want to add anything at all? Anything that Andrea should be mindful of?
Yeah, certainly. No less complex from the trading standard side, unfortunately. What I would say is the consumer rights legislation is derived from EU legislation, and it is something that we've retained. So all the bits and pieces about actually entering into the agreement, terms and conditions, consumer statutory rights, we actually have higher than in the EU, but they do all come from EU-based legislation, so it is approximately the same. Same with distance selling, how you actually trade over the internet, the information you've got to give to them, all that is exactly the same. But I would like to pick up on one of the things which was said, which is that we don't provide package travel. Now, unfortunately, to be part of, there are four elements to package travel. There's travel, there's accommodation, there's vehicle hire, and there's what is referred to as an other tourist service. And if you're providing two of those, then you are going to come under the package travel requirements. But what they have said is where other tourist services is one of the two things that you're providing, it would only bring you into it if that is a significant part of the package that you're putting together, or it provides part of the significant value. I would recommend they contact us for specific advice so we can see exactly what proportion of their business is made up of that. But I personally think that the business probably is going to be covered by package travel. So you would have to register, be bonded, have insurance for package travel, that sort of thing. That is slightly complicated, so I would recommend definitely they get in touch with us for advice. There is good guidance out there, and I'm going to drop a link into the chat so you can access it directly. But yeah, I think you are going to have to comply with those requirements.
Andrea, Nathan, thank you very much indeed. Andrea, yeah, definitely book a call. It sounds like 0333 602 300. Give us guys a call, and then they will arrange a call back at a more convenient time to go through in a bit more detail. Thank you very much indeed, Nathan. I'm just going to jump to one of the chat questions that's coming from Lawrence here. So question, we used to receive a VAT 79 certificate every month for import of VAT paid to claim back on our VAT return. Now we receive a monthly postponed import VAT statement. There is very little detail about what businesses are required to do with this statement. Also, we currently use the VAT cash accounting system. Apparently, we cannot use cash accounting and monthly postponed import VAT. Any for clarification on this? I won't answer this one. I'll hand this over to Sue, I think.
Okay, yeah, so you used to get your C79 and now we've moved to this postponed import VAT accounting, or PIVA as it's sometimes called. So rather than paying up front, this is a really good simplification that the government's brought in. You don't pay your import VAT up front at the time of import. You can choose instead to defer it onto your VAT return. And it gives you a cash flow benefit because you're not having to pay it and then wait in order to claim it back. So when you say what do you do with your statement, this monthly statement that is available through your government gateway account will tell you how much you've imported during the previous month and how much the VAT is on that. And you will have to pay that VAT to HMRC by putting it in box 1 of your VAT return. And then assuming that you're entitled to full input tax recovery on things that you buy, you will then put it in box 4 of your VAT return, which is the input tax box. So you pay it as output tax, you claim it as input tax on your VAT return. Overall, nothing to pay because the two will cancel each other off. And you need to make sure that you print out that statement or save it somewhere because it won't stay forever in your government gateway. So make sure that you do that. You mentioned about the VAT cash accounting system. I'm not aware of that, but I assume it's because with cash accounting, you only pay VAT over when you've been paid on your supplies, and you can only recover it when you pay it to your suppliers. So in terms of the cash accounting system, it won't apply to import VAT because that has to be put on the VAT return, as I say, in box 1 and box 4. So as far as I'm aware, you can carry on using cash accounting for the rest of your supplies, but the import VAT has to be declared, as I've just explained.
Wow, Lawrence, look at that. Even got box numbers, told you exactly where to write things down. Fantastic. We won't get that better anywhere else. Superb. Thank you very much, Lee. Okay, let's go to another advanced question. So this one is from Angela Bell of Met Limited. We test medical devices and have clients that ship them into us for testing. These samples are normally destroyed during this process. What paperwork is needed to import into the UK? Graham, I'm going to start with you on this one. So this is Angela Bell, Met. So testing medical devices that then actually get destroyed. What do they need to import?
Oh, thank you, Tudor. Well, there are a lot of different schemes for what might be called temporary imports, although in this case, apparently they're going to be destroyed anyway. What I would usually say, and in fact it applies very often with the sort of areas I get myself involved with, it probably is best if we sit down and absolutely understand the specifics, the logistics of what you're doing. But there's a whole range of temporary procedures, duty suspension arrangements that are available through HMRC. It'll just be a question of making sure we get you pointed in the right direction, because what you want to avoid, and I'm sure this is behind your question, is you don't want to end up paying duty on something that's been imported if it's coming in for repair or some sort of process when it's a product that already exists in a tax-paid environment. So what I would say is there will be ways of dealing with this, but it'll be about understanding your particular processes and going from there.
Right, thank you. Nathan, obviously, whenever we talk about medical devices, I immediately think, hello, got to be some regulation around this. What was your view on this one?
Yeah, the products themselves are heavily regulated, but the situation here from a trading standards perspective is a lot similar. These products are not being placed on the market, so they don't need to be finished, ready, in compliance, with the legislation. Obviously, in this case, they're being brought in so they can be tested to get their certification to make sure that they do comply. So in this case, although you would normally require significant documentation and product safety files, that sort of thing, you won't need that from a trading standards perspective in this one. If you have that information available, it's always wise to include it, because then it prevents, you know, anyone potentially holding it up that isn't sure what they're looking for. So if you've got it, include it, but it doesn't need to have it. It should be clearly marked as obviously not for resale, so it's not being placed on the market, and it would obviously have to be a business-to-business transaction, because if you're selling it to consumers, that's immediately a red flag. But other than that, pretty simple from trading standards point of view.
That's nice to hear. That's great. Fantastic. Hopefully that's going to give Andrew some peace of mind there. I'm just going to turn back to a live chat question here, which might be one for me actually, but you're welcome to chip in on, guys. So this is from Brett. Brett H. Good morning, Tudor. We send a lot of wooden packaging material to the EU. Since Brexit, all of this WPM, wood packaging material, needs to be ISPM 15 treated. I was very surprised this wasn't part of the Brexit deal to enable the movement without the heat treatments to the EU. Do you think anything will change? Now, I guess my role at the Chamber obviously is to sort of look at international trade and I guess go into a bit more detail around the trade deal. I think as we were all discovering, the trade deal was sort of put together, you wouldn't believe it, feels like it's been put together in a hurry, which I think was the sort of the intention to try and get it done before the deadline. Of course, what's now becoming materially evident is the amount of things that were left out of it, not least of which, of course, professional qualification recognition, and we have professional services, architects and stuff struggling, as well as, of course, one of the biggest ones that was a real hit was the export health certificate, products of animal origin. That's been a major issue. And of course, we've seen a lot in the news about sort of shellfish and things being sort of being held at the port. And unfortunately, this is another one of those sort of many gaps, really, where the detail that's been sort of established over sort of the last 40 years of EU partnership has been completely overlooked. I think just because of sheer volume of regulation, legislation that was required, that not every point is going to be looked at. So what do I think is likely to change? It could do, I think, is probably a bit of a get out answer, because the free movement of goods obviously is still of great interest to the Europeans as it is to the UK, but it will be low on the priority list. There will be other more pressing political items that need to be resolved, like the movement of car parts, like the movement of products of animal origin, the Northern Ireland issue as well, the problems that's causing. So unfortunately, any changes that are going to be needed are going to be a long way off in certain sectors, because they are just low on the priority. There are sort of more tax beneficial institutions and sectors that will look to get addressed. So I think for now, I would work on the basis, again, we will have a bit of certainty, work on the basis it is what it is, and it will be thus for at least a good year or two, if not more. So there is no pressing agenda for change on that type of sector, that type of product. So I think it's a tough one, but you're going to have to sort of wear it for a little while longer. Nathan, yeah, Graham, please do. Yeah, Graham.
I too don't have a crystal ball, but I'm reminded that for all of my working life, Australia, which those of you who've travelled to Australia will know how protective they are about their environment. You get sprayed when your plane lands, you can't take a sandwich that you've half eaten in, all those kind of things. Australia has been very protective in that sort of way. You've needed to have a certificate that a pallet that's made of wood has been treated and has a certain percentage, usually 14% or less moisture in the pallet. And I think this is a move in that same similar direction. It's kind of almost, it may be, without wishing to get too political, it's a little bit of another barrier to trade. My view is, when you consider the ecology situation, things like ash dieback and the growing list of infestations and diseases that seem to be moving around the world, my view is it's more likely to stay and be another certificate you're going to have to produce with the paperwork of your exports or indeed process when your imports come in. that I think it's just something that that in a few years' time you'll just think, oh yeah, we're sending something to Belgium. We'll need a certificate that says the pallet's got it's been heat treated and what have you. And I think it will just be one of those things we have to do, unfortunately. But if it's good for the planet, maybe that's not a bad thing.
That's great. Brett, do let us know if we've answered your question correctly. I think obviously none of us are experts in your particular field, but certainly in terms of how we read the trade deal and what's likely to change in the next sort of few months or years, that's what we read it. So do let us know in the chat if that's answered your question. If not, come back to us again. Right. Okay, we're going to move across to another question from the preliminaries, which was one for Sue. Incoterms. Wow, haven't we got to live with Incoterms now? Goodness me, it's a phrase we're very familiar with now. Okay, this one's from Ashley Carey from Novacore, UK. Incoterms, question mark. What is the implication if the incorrect one is used? If we use DDP, delivery duty paid, will we incur any costs? Should we use DDU, delivery duty unpaid? We supply medical devices. We are set up for PVA and our goods should be zero tariff. Who wants to take the Incoterms? Sue, do you want to come to you first?
Sure, yes.
Implications of them. So what if we get it wrong?
So, so the thing about Incoterms is, it's not so much an incorrect one is used, because with Incoterms, you agree it between yourself and your customer. You agree the terms on which you're making this supply. So there's always room for discussion, but DDP is sort of on a scale of kind of, okay in terms of its impact on you to giving you the most problems. DDP is at the most problems end. So DDP means that you, the supplier, the UK supplier, are responsible and liable for delivery of that product from your warehouse all the way down to the port, onto the ship, through customs in France, let's say, and delivery onwards to your customer. So you have to pay for all of that. It's your cost. And the problem with that is that when those goods arrive in France, they have to be imported into the EU. And at that point, import duty and import VAT have to be paid. Now, you've said your goods should be zero tariff, so that's good. Presumably they're either UK origin or EU origin, and therefore zero duty. But there will be import VAT. You will have to pay VAT when those goods enter the EU, and because you're on DDP terms, that's your cost. So normally with VAT, you can claim it back. But because it's French VAT, you can't claim that back on your UK VAT return. And the only alternative is for you to register for VAT in France so that you can claim that VAT back on your French VAT return. And then you would make an onward supply to your French customer with French VAT charged on it. So by using DDP, you've made life really tough for yourself. You've increased your costs. And in particular, registering for VAT somewhere in the EU is very costly now because we're no longer part of the EU. It used to be easy, you could register anywhere. But now that we're not part of the EU, you have to appoint representatives and so on in order to register for you and on your behalf. So yes, DDP is the worst one. So what I would advise is you go back to your customer, you talk it through with them, you say, look, can we come to some agreement on the terms, on the Incoterms, because DDP doesn't work for us. And then there will be a commercial discussion where you are obviously hoping that you can get your customer to agree to do the import themselves into the EU. And to pay the import VAT, which they can then recover on their VAT return. There's no duty, so that doesn't complicate things. So it may be that you'll need to give them a reduction in the price that you charge because they're going to have to take on the declaration into the EU. Or maybe you can change completely and say, well, look, X Works is what we want to go with, and that means it's their responsibility to come and pick up from your doorstep those goods and take them all the way back to their premises in France. So Incoterms ranges from X Works, where they're entirely responsible for picking the goods up and all of the costs of taking it back to their home country, and DDP, which is the complete opposite, where you're responsible for all the costs of taking it to them. And you need to be talking to your customers to agree better Incoterms if you've ended up with DDP. Graham, do you want to add anything on that? Because you've got a lot of experience here, and perhaps also got the list of the Incoterms that might be helpful.
Yeah, I can. We can refer to a list of Incoterms if we need to. Although we'd probably break away from the main part of the meeting for 10 minutes in order to run through that. But we can do that if we need to. The thing I would say, picking up on the way the question was asked that Tudor read out, and I'd pick up on two things. One is to echo what Sue said. You can't have a situation where you're using the wrong Incoterms, because Incoterms are an internationally recognised list of delivery terms which can be used to agree where delivery takes place. And as Sue's already said, there's actually 11 Incoterms. The two she's mentioned, X works at the beginning and DDP at the end, so there's 9 others in between, and each one represents various stages along the progress of a consignment. The thing I would pick up on is the questioner made reference to DDU, and DDU is not one of the recognised Incoterms. So if you put DDU on your paperwork, you're dealing with a term which the ICC, the International Chamber of Commerce, don't offer as one of the 11 Incoterms. The nearest you can get to what might be called DDU is DAP, which is delivered at place, where there's a named place at the destination point, and is probably the one that most easily slots into the answer that Sue's given in terms of not wanting to be involved with VAT, accounting for VAT at destination. DAP, you agree to deliver goods to a certain place, it may be the customs address or wherever the delivery point is, but without getting involved in accounting for duty and taxes at the destination point. I think that probably, Sue, expands a little bit on what you said without going into masses of detail, but we can, if there's specific requests for going through lots and lots of stuff on Incoterms, we can call up the list and make reference to it if we need to.
Great, that's great. Thank you very much. We won't do that just yet because, as you say, it's quite an involved subject, and it prompted me to remind you that two things. One is obviously the Chamber offers training, and we are in the process of just drafting up a selection of training events, and Incoterms is one of the topics that we do. So keep an eye on the Chamber's events page. If you're not on the newsletter, make sure you signed up, because we'll be sort of putting out a range of different training programs and courses. We also do an accredited one as well, which helps you. So if you decide you now need to sort of develop your own export department, we have a sort of an export administrators course as well, which is made up of sort of various modules. The other thing to mention is if you haven't done so already, we are customs declarations service providers as well. So the Chamber can do your customs declarations if you don't want to go to the expense of paying your fees and installing some quite expensive software. We can do all that for you as part of the service. So again, get in touch with the Chamber. And whilst we're on the subject of Incoterms and Chambers, actually they were formally adopted and invented by the International Chambers of Commerce in 1936. So there we are, a little bit of background information, a bit of history. So the Chambers are very much the place to deal with this sort of stuff. We're going to go to a live chat question here. This is from Stuart. He has a removals company, and whereas we could travel freely into Europe, we now require shipping agents as well as various documentation, the classic T1, which you've heard a lot of recently. So we require shipping documentation. I've spoken to Ben at our customs service. Appreciate the list of agents that he sent through, but most of these agents seem to deal with B2B solutions rather than moving individual or company belongings and possessions into Europe. Does anyone know of any shipping or customs agents that provide this service for companies like ours, or should we maybe look to train in-house for this role? Graham, I think I'm going to ask you that question because you're probably best placed to answer that one.
Yeah, the main answer I would give is that there are firms that specialise as international movers, and I guess a removals company, as it grows, may make the transition from having lots of removals in the UK and then the occasional move into Europe, which they may sub out to an international removal specialist. And if business gets busier for them, then they may ultimately become specialists themselves. It would be wrong of me to name international mover specialists on the basis that other brands would be available, but I'm happy to talk about that subject. The main thing to consider is about documenting the consignment properly, so that it's clear that the goods that are being moved are already tax-paid goods being moved. Effectively, they're personal effects in most removal cases, and so it's about making sure that the documents reflect the fact that it's personal effects that are being moved rather than dutiable items. But customs can, at their discretion, apply duty to a situation. So if something looks new and there isn't a piece of paperwork that declares that it's already owned and bought, you can end up picking up a duty charge if you're not careful. So it's about documenting personal effects properly. But I'm happy to talk it through with the questioner.
Okay, so again, Stuart, you're more than welcome to give us a call, 03333 602 300, and book a call back from Graham to see if we can try and get to the bottom of this. I know you've already been chatting to Ben, and Ben's provided you with a list, so we'll just make sure we haven't missed anything. Graham, before we move off this topic, this is the T1, which I still struggle with a little bit as sort of someone on slightly on the periphery here. The T1, is this connected with the sort of movement of non-taxable goods, non-dutiable goods across the EU, like the CTC? Does that fall under that side, I think?
The T1's a transit document, so effectively what you've got each time a vehicle moves in and out of a European country. Obviously, we've got a borderless Europe now, and have had since 1990, whenever it was, Schengen, etc. But what technically happens is each time a consignment moves through a country, it moves into a customs territory and then back out of the customs territory onto the next one, etc., etc. The T1 is the transit document that the haulier presents to customs for the customs journey through the various countries that the goods are going to travel through. And then that ensures basically a smooth transit through to somewhere that may be as far away as Poland or Austria or something. So there's a few countries to travel through on the way there. It also applies to empty vehicles, for instance. So if there's a vehicle going back to Europe as an empty return vehicle, that may need a T1 as well. So it's about transit.
Yeah, that's useful. I think one of the things that we're finding as a chamber, as you quite rightly, Stuart, you've already asked Ben, and we are getting inundated with questions for CTC documentation, which obviously allows the movement of goods from point A to point B without being taxed all the way through the various tax regions and stuff like that. So I think keep an eye on this space. We will continue to sort of try and see what we can bring in to try and address this. We've got the expertise, and it's a problem that's been growing elsewhere. Okay, let's move back to some of our questions we've had in. This next one is from Barbara Brummel at Bedfont Scientific. Home of Knoxbox. Indeed, know them very well. So Barbara says, I would like to know what goods value to put on imports which are returned items for repair. We receive such items annually. Should the value be the original invoice value or the value we would sell the item for now, as the goods can be 5 years old and purchase discounts and newer products on the market sales are now less than originally charged. So price variation from the original sale through to its resale, current value, what do they put onto the imports? So Graham first.
Frankly, Tudor, the answer is whatever is the considered value of the item. If it's got 5 years wear, then it's probably not going to be worth as much as when it was brand new, although some things can appreciate in value. The key thing would be to declare the reason for the import. So if it's temporary for repair or whatever, go through the procedures that I mentioned earlier, which are temporary duty suspension procedures, that sort of thing, which we can apply. We can talk about depending upon whatever the specific circumstances are. And the magic clause on the invoice is value for customs purposes only. So, you know, if you've got a value that, let's say you perceive the value to be £5,000, whereas it was 25,000 when it was new, if that's a reasonable estimate of value, then that's all they're looking for. It's what would you insure it for instance, that sort of thing. So value for customs purposes only 5,000. If you've used that sort of wording, you're not then going to get a customs bill based upon a valuation of 5,000 because it's for customs purposes only.
Okay. Sue, have you got any knowledge on this area? Or
Well, the only thing I would add would be you might want to think about using IPR in this situation. So if the goods are coming into the UK for repair and then returning back into the EU again, then inward processing relief would mean that there's no duty or VAT on the goods coming into the UK because they're going to leave again, and then the value won't be a major issue because the goods are going to be re-exported, so there's no duty liability. So that's another way around it. You could see if getting approval for IPR is worthwhile for your business.
okay, yeah, again, Barbara, probably worth putting a call in actually, because IPR, given the amount of product you move cross borders, there might be some value in that. I know you've got a sort of fairly long reach in the type of businesses you trade. Yeah, Graham.
Judah, could I just to add, when I talked about duty suspension and that sort of thing, that IPR is one of the things that's covered in that. So I was making reference to that really without wanting to get too technical. To add to what Sue said, there's a whole section which is worth a read, not just in terms of IPR, but also there's another area that's worth being aware of called OPR, which sits next to IPR as a customs function. And then if you are searching with HMRC, you break out into a lot of other different duty suspension options depending upon the nature of the consignment that's coming in or going out.
Excellent. Thank you both very much indeed. I'm going to go to a question from the chat. So this is Melanie Loxley. Hi, I'm sending one to two B2B pallet deliveries to the EU every week. Every customer and every haulier requires something different on the commercial invoice. Yes, we had a row over UK and GB. Don't worry, you're not alone, Melanie. And we know where we live. Our software supplier hasn't been able to keep up with the constant changes. We have to populate an Excel version manually. We use 2 to 3 HS codes and the goods are on the same pallet. Is there a recognized standard format or any advice? Crikey. Who wants to take that on? Graham, I think it's back to you again, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so, Tudor. One thing I would say is I think the hauliers and the courier firms are gradually responding to a situation. I've noticed one or two queries that we've had where people they receive an order from one country, but the delivery needs to be made to another country, and some of the courier firms only seem to be able to cope with the delivery being the same address as whoever's paying for the goods at destination. And I think in the case of this sort of situation, the hauliers are gradually getting it organised. It's about their software as well as it is about the exporter's software, but we can usually talk to them and come to some sort of sensible, logical arrangements. So I'm happy to talk with you about that as well.
Okay. Interestingly, Melanie, I know we've experienced the same where there's a lot of hauliers that sort of are struggling sometimes to sort of get to grips with codes and various bits and pieces on using sort of customs declarations. Obviously, you know, we can give some advice on those particular specifics, and of course we can do that for you if that's the case. But as Graham said, we are facing sort of a learning curve the whole industry is so. People will adapt, and hopefully we'll get a bit of continuity over a period of time. But we were still having a row between the Belgian Chambers of Commerce and the UK Chambers of Commerce around whether or not certificates of origin should have UK or GB on them, and that still rumbles on a little bit. But we'll let them crack on for that for a little while longer. Okay, let's go across. I've got a question for you, Nathan, coming up now. So this is from JD Harris of LC Designs Co. So I understand 2021 is a transition. This is referring to the easement that were put in place as part of the sort of the new agreement, whereby we need to start affixing the UKCA/CE markings to our products. Is this the same time frame for the UK and EU addresses? Previously, I've seen that this must be completed by the 16th of July 2021, but unsure if this is now out of date. And then supplementary questions here. If we have a small product, are we allowed to create a removable sticker so that both addresses on it, or does this sticker have to be permanent? And question 3, we have a distributor in Europe and we are unsure whether to give him authorized representative status or just list him as an importer so we can use his EU address. He takes the majority of our lines, but not all, and he isn't the only company we sell to in the EU. Right, Nathan, get your teeth into that one.
There's quite a lot to unpack on that. It
is. You've been quiet. Now's your chance.
Yeah, if we start off with the time frame thing, as with all things, it seems the UK is being a bit more accommodating than the EU. So businesses have got until the 31st of December 2021 to move over from CE to UKCA. So you can continue to place goods on the market that are CE marked now, and you can do that until the end of December. However, if any sort of mandatory third-party testing is taking place in the UK rather than the EU, that immediately triggers the requirement to start using the UK CA mark instead. To muddy the waters a little bit, because of the unfettered access issues, Northern Ireland goods are still going to be marked up with CE, and there's no end date on that. So if you've got CE marked goods that are coming in from Northern Ireland, they can continue to be placed on the UK market ad infinitum at the moment. If you had anything on the market before the 1st of January, you know, there's some products out there which might take a hell of a long time to sell through. If they're on the market before 1st of January, you don't have to worry about reworking them at all. They're all allowed to be sold straight through. Any goods that you make, any CE marked goods that you manufacture in the GB that are going to EU, the rules around CE marks are staying the same for that perspective. You're going to have to continue applying with the EU rules. But from today, well, from 1st of January, those goods needed to be marked up with an EU responsible person or authorised representative on the packaging themselves, and also would need to take responsibility and have their name on documents like the Declaration of Conformity, that sort of thing. But if you're going the other way and you're bringing goods in which are CE marked to be sold on the GB market, they still need to have a UK name and address on them, but that can be provided on documentation that comes with the product until the 31st of December. So when you're bringing them in, you don't have to remark the goods, just make sure the information is on documentation. Now, the part of the question that related to the 16th of July, that is a new piece of legislation that is being brought in the EU, comes into force on 16th of July. We are not enacting that legislation because we're no longer part of the EU, but that's irrespective, really. If sellers of manufactured goods that are selling directly to consumers in the EU want to continue doing that, then they are going to have to comply, even though it's not our legislation. What it basically says is if you put manufactured goods on the EU market, and that's not just goods which have a CE mark, that is any manufactured good, if they're being sold over the internet directly to an EU consumer, then you have to have the name of an authorised representative in the EU from the 16th of July that appears on all your products. Now, what they have specifically said in that legislation is that applies to fulfillment houses as well. So if you're selling on Amazon, eBay, Etsy, something like that, which is selling directly to EU consumers, then you are going to have an authorised representative in the EU, and all your products need to be marked up with those details.
Wow. Okay.
So that's going to be a big change, but that is purely B2C.
Removable sticker?
Yeah, the removable sticker, if you put in, if there's a legal requirement for labelling on there, then it has to be indelible. So it depends on what you're referring to as a removable sticker, because you can have something that you just stick over the top, so you can overlabel, that's not a problem, but you shouldn't be designing it so that it's easily removable, because anything that is mandated having to be on there, you have to make sure that it's going to stay on there. So that's normally by way of printing, or if you have a very, very small product or where there is no packaging, then that would be in documentation that accompanied it. And the last bit, the distributor in Europe. Okay, so I just want to address the whole thing about the importer and the authorized rep. Okay, because they're talking about he can just put the details on there. I would say is, if they're a business which is importing your goods into the EU, then they are the responsible person, so their details have to be placed on the product. But what I would say is, although that has to happen, that person, that business needs to be aware of it, because by putting their details on it, they're taking on all of the legal responsibility for those goods. So even though they have a legal responsibility to do it, I think you need to be having that conversation. You can't just put their name and address details on it. They need to be aware of it. But the authorized representative thing is slightly different. If they're going to be an authorized representative, you're going to need a formal written agreement where they agree to take on responsibility for all the products that are being sold in the EU, not just the ones that are going to them. So if you're going to go down the authorized representative route, all of your products would be marked up with that business's details, even if they're not going to him, because that business is agreeing to take on responsibility for all of them. Just double checking. I made some notes on this one because it was quite a long question.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to cover on that one.
No, it's a detail. I'm not going to let you off the hook now, actually, because Meinolf Clipping has sent in a question here. So we're importing CLT, cross-laminated timber, structural material for prefabricated timber homes. Okay, yep. Material has a technical approval, ABZ, in Germany, but does not have a CE. Now, this was not a problem last year, but of course the UK now require UKCA for construction products. If we would have to pay for full test by an approved body, we would have to stop that side of our business as the costs would be too high. A familiar problem where people are having to reassess their business model based on the overheads that have been incurred now. Is there any guidance on bespoke construction products? We talked about divergence and some of these other bits and pieces in the past there, Nathan. So do you think we are going to see UKCA marks being required and tested here in the UK?
Okay, this is another exceptionally complicated one, because anything to do with construction products is very, very complicated. And what I would say as a brief caveat to this, the construction products legislation sits there as a set of basic rules, but then all of the product-specific standards supplement those rules. So although I've got plenty of experience with construction products, all my experience is in the steel industry. So the timber is going to be slightly different. But my understanding is with construction products, and this cross-laminated timber is definitely going to come under a construction product. Needs to meet the definition of it and be covered by some sort of harmonized standard. Now, even though they're not a harmonized standard itself, my understanding was that European technical assessments, what this chap is referring to, is one of the documents which would allow it to be brought within construction products, and then would require either a CE mark or a UK CA mark. So yeah, on the construction product side, I think it is going to be covered as a construction product. It would require a UK CA mark. For a UK CA mark to be applied, it would need assessment by a UK-based notified body. However, I don't know how it works for timber, but with steel, you have the option of bringing in a notified body to assess your factory production controls. So he doesn't assess the final product, he assesses how you are producing your products to make sure that they are being produced in a safe manner. You have performance certificates which say that they can comply with the performance of the specific safety requirements, which are in your ETA, your European Technical Assessments, or your harmonised legislation. So it might not be a case of bringing in a notified body to test that product. You might be able to have a notified body in the UK assess your factory production control and then give you certification, which you then self-certify against all of your products, and then do the same in Europe. So it might not be a case of you pay out for every product you're manufacturing. It will purely depend on what is in the European Technical Assessment on that one. So in this one, he is definitely going to need to contact us for specific advice.
It sounds like it, and I've got a horrible feeling in mind off that there's, if you're importing product, you're not actually sort of manufacturing anything here in the UK, then potentially, and this could be the case for everybody then. So obviously a lot of construction materials are imported from all over the globe. Is that likely to see that sort of become a widespread issue then, with basically UKCA mark having, you know, testing and the certification having to be done for all imported construction products? Or
well, if it's a construction product and it's being placed on the market in the UK, then it will have to buy the UKCA marking. So there are going to have to be, I mean, it's been I haven't had to look at this since the 1st of January. So this is the first time I've had to consider construction products since then.
Yeah.
But it would seem to me that if it is covered, not by a harmonised standard, but by a recognised European Technical Assessment, then I would believe that you would probably be able to have that UKCA marked. Now, I don't know that for sure. I'm going to have to look at the specifics of it. Like I say, if this chap would like to come to us, we can take a look at that for him. I have to say, I probably misunderstood the question slightly because I thought he was producing it here, selling it into Germany, rather than importing it from Germany.
Yeah, so I think he was worried about, as many are, that actually if they now need to get a UK certification on imported products, that's going to bump the cost up and therefore might not make it a viable product to shift into the UK market. So, okay.
Well, I do have contacts within the construction industry, and we're the primary authority for the British Constructional Steelwork Association. So this is something that I could definitely investigate further, because it will be being discussed at a high level.
Okay, that's great, Nathan. Thank you very much indeed. Meinhof, yeah, obviously book a call 0333 602 300. Nathan, I'm going to stick with you because we've got some follow-up questions based on answers you've given earlier, and then we're going to sort of turn our attention back to Graham and Sue for some of the questions we have for them. So Sandy replied, Nathan, so if we have a product that was manufactured prior to the 1st of January, available for sale online to the EU/EQ and the rest of the world, do we need to update these to include the EU RP?
Yes, if they're being put on the GB or the UK market, you can get away with not having to do it, but the EU has said it must comply from the 1st of January.
Okay, there we go. That answers that one. And then thank you very much. So this was JD, just picking back on the answer that you gave a moment ago. We've decided to go ahead with appointing our distributor as an authorised representative. Are we okay to draft the contract between us, or does this have to be done by a third party? Ooh. Further to the product labelling, some of the items are small, but we apply a WEEE label which features our UK address. It won't be possible to add the EU address due to the size. So can we add this onto the packaging and instructions only? Happy to have this answered after the webinar. Well, I've asked the question. Should have put that at the beginning there. I would have to go through it all. No, that's fine. No problem at all, Nathan. So what do you think on that one, Nathan?
Okay. With regards to the authorised representative thing, there's no formal way of doing it. You know, that you have to follow. Just any agreement you have should be in writing, and they need to agree to take on basically a manufacturer's responsibilities. So they've gone from being a distributor and having far reduced requirements to being basically a manufacturer. Those are specified in the legislation, exactly what a manufacturer has to do. And the authorised representative not only has to be willing, but be able to do that. Okay, so that is a requirement for them.
If the packaging's
with
really
regards-
small, tiny packaging,
Yeah.
where do you put the name and address on that?
With regards to the packaging, depending on what the product is, there is normally provision within the legislation that it can appear either on a swing tag or abbreviated information can appear on a swing tag or something attached to it, and then the full information appear in documentation. It will be done on a product by product basis, depending on what piece of legislation applies. So if they get in touch, let us know exactly what the legislation is. We can look up the specific requirements for them.
Excellent, Nathan. Thank you very much indeed. You've earned your lunch today there. Well done. I'm going to come to you, Sue, because there's another question in the live chat, which is specifically around VAT stuff. So Laura Long asked the question: we are a UK VAT registered company. We deal in print advertising in many EU country publications. We bill our UK-based clients for this advertising and charge UK VAT to them. The publishers who own these titles, who are based in the EU, for example, Spain, bill us for this advertising and have charged us their local IVA. How do we claim this back if we are being told we need to register VAT in each individual EU country? Surely this can't be correct. I say bill us, it might be bill US, bill us. What do you think, Sue?
Okay. I think it's bill us. So this is a very interesting question, and so this is quite different to other questions because we're talking about services here. And we didn't think that there would be too much impact of Brexit on services. There's been a little. I mentioned the tour operators margin scheme earlier, but interesting question. So what should be happening here, in my opinion, is that because you've got a UK VAT registered business buying advertising from a Spanish VAT registered business, we have what's called the reverse charge. And what that means is that the Spanish business doesn't charge any of their own VAT, which is the IVA mentioned in the question. And instead, Laura's business would account for UK VAT under the reverse charge, and they pay it again, box 1 of their VAT return as output tax, claim it back in box 4 of their VAT return as input tax. Now, that's what was always happening, and that should not really have changed. There's been a bit of tinkering around the edges, but on the whole, if you've got an EU business selling something to a UK business, the reverse charge should apply. Now, it used to be that we would give our VAT numbers to this Spanish supplier, and that way they wouldn't charge Spanish VAT. Now, there used to be a system, well, there still is a system of checking VAT numbers within the EU, but we're not part of that anymore because we're not part of the EU. So EU businesses can no longer check that UK businesses are actually in business, and they need to be able to do that in order to not charge VAT. So instead, there is a system for businesses in the UK to obtain from the UK tax authorities, HMRC, a certificate of taxable status is what it's called. I'll put the link into the chat after I've finished talking, but you can go to HMRC and you ask for a certificate that shows that you are a taxable business. You should be able to give that to the Spanish business and say, look, here you are, I am a taxable business, you shouldn't charge me Spanish VAT, and then they should credit it to you. But I say should, but you know what we're finding obviously is that there's a myriad of different ways of businesses dealing with VAT, and of dealing with UK companies now that they're not part of the EU. And I suspect, Laura, that you've got caught up in this, the Spanish business not quite understanding the rules. But that would be my advice, would be to go to HMRC, get a certificate of taxable status, give it to your Spanish supplier and say, look, here's the proof, you should not charge us VAT, it should be reverse charged in the UK, and then they won't charge you any Spanish VAT. So try that. If that doesn't work, or if you've got any questions, then please give me a call through the Growth Hub.
So thank you very much indeed. Interesting, you touched on a point there which we're finding at the Chamber. We're finding a lot of EU suppliers are struggling, even more so in some respects, because they have a different set of deadlines that the UK are imposing on imports, which will come into effect fairly soon. And we're anxious, talking to a number of different EU suppliers, that they are probably as ill prepared as some of us have been, based on the fact that they didn't have any information either until the 31st of December. So yeah, we can see there's still going to be some issues, and you'll find situations where you are talking to a supplier and their interpretation is very different to yours, and it's going to require a bit of patience and perseverance to try and make sure that that's nice and clear. Excellent, Sue, thank you very much indeed. Okay, so we're going to scoot through some quick questions now, really, just to try and make up some time. We're doing well on time here. Hopefully we're covering everything that people are looking for. So let's go across to, we have here a question from Klaus Löffler from L. Robinson & Co. and Gilliam. How can we avoid our customers in Europe being charged for import customs clearance? I think this is a clear Incoterms question for me. So Sue, how can they help avoid their customers paying import duties? Oh, hello. We should be. There you go. That's okay. That's okay.
Oh dear. I'd leave it on all the time, but then, you know, if you cough, everybody hears you cough, don't they? No. So one of the problems of this age. Anyway, sorry about that. So yes, it's an Incoterms question. So it's all down to your Incoterms, Klaus, and depends on what you agree with your customer. So if you agree, as we were saying earlier, DDP, then you're liable for all of the import customs clearance in the country of destination, plus all the costs of getting it to your customer. Whereas if you agree on something like DAP, then your customer will be responsible for paying for the import customs duty, VAT, and the clearance. So if you want to avoid your customers having to pay anything, so I think I've said before that, you know, a lot of bigger businesses have been saying to their UK suppliers that, you know, we don't care that you left the EU, but you've got to put us in the same position as we were before. So you deal with all of the import into the EU, and you pay for all of the delivery charges and so on. And that's when the Incoterms come in. But if you want to avoid your customers dealing with the import customs clearance, then you need DDP, and that means that you, Klaus, will have to be registered for VAT in the country of destination or one place within the EU in order that you can account for the import VAT in that country and recover it, and then bill on from that country with local VAT, or as we used to under the old dispatch system, zero-rated dispatches within the EU.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very much a case of pass the pain, isn't it? Really, someone's got to do it. It's got to try and figure out who's got to do it, and how much they're going to make a fuss, whether it's going to cost you or not. Okay, thank you very much indeed. So Lorraine Webb from Totally Natural Solutions Limited here. Right, can you go through the process of obtaining a fiscal representative in Europe, indirect representative, before applying for an EU EORI and selling goods DDP? Very specific there. So fiscal representative in Europe. I've got Nathan Graham against that one. Who wants to take that? Nathan, do you want to have a shot? Mute. Your turn now.
I believe in this case, fiscal representative is a tax-related issue rather than the authorised representative, which would be me.
Ah, right. Okay. For fiscal representative, it's back to you again. Then I'm guessing, Sue, is it?
Yes, I think so. So the question is, I presume, is about the order of how you go about doing things. So you can apply for an EU EORI without having a fiscal representative in Europe, without having a VAT registration in Europe. You can apply for an EU EORI, which you will need in order to be responsible for taking goods into the EU. But the answer to your question is yes, you can indeed go through the process of registering for VAT and getting a fiscal representative in Europe. So indirect representative means somebody who is responsible jointly and severally with you for any VAT or duty payable. And leaving the EU has meant that, I think I mentioned earlier, that we have to have these representatives now for our businesses in Europe. Previously, because we were part of the EU, we could register anywhere, but now, so for example, let's say you want to take goods into Germany, you have to have an indirect customs representative in Germany who will be jointly and severally liable with you for the duty and VAT on those goods going into Germany. And it can take time to set that up. It can be very difficult to find somebody because of the additional costs that the business in Germany is going to have to be liable for. So yes, my advice would be do it up front, try and get set up with a representative, with a registration, and then your EU EORI will come out of that registration, and then you'll be in a position of selling goods DDP. And as I mentioned before, you could register in one place in Europe rather than having to register in every country that you take goods into. But it does mean that, for example, you register in the Netherlands and have a fiscal representative there. It does mean that your goods have to go through the Netherlands and then go on to their destination in Sweden or whatever. So increases the costs of transport, but it is all possible.
It's all possible. There we go.
But expensive.
It can be done. That's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Sue. Right, Waterloo Air Products. I have a couple of questions here. So Sam Sullivan, I see she's on the call as well. So first of all, we would like to understand how your system can assist us for export, what it does and does not offer, and what it requires as in compliance and data input. I think we're probably referring to the Customs Declaration Service, possibly. I might need to ask you to clarify that for us in a second, Sam. And there was another question from Waterloo Air Products about from Becky Rutter. The information needed for certificate of origins and if they can be completed in advance. Also, is there a how-to guide? Again, the Chamber obviously does certificates of origin and we do customs declarations. And I think these are probably service questions, really. I'm going to invite Graham just to maybe pitch in to see if he can answer either of those questions, but it might be one for a follow-up. Failing that, I will come to you again, Sam, and just ask if you can clarify what it is that you'd like to know from us today. So Graham first.
Yeah, thank you, Tudor. The information required for certificate of origin is very similar to that required for all the other export documents. It won't have escaped you you'll notice that the weight's always in the same place, the cubic measurement's always in the same place, the exporter's always in the same place, etc., etc. For which we can thank an organisation called the Simplification of International Trade Procedures, who deliberated on export documents 50 years ago, or almost 50 years ago. And prior to that, things used to be in all sorts of places, all over documents. The information required is the same description as you're using on the invoice, and all the other things that we know and love, and I'm happy to talk it through with you. In terms of can you arrange a certificate of origin in advance, I think was the question. Well, yes, in that you don't want your certificate of origin to be produced at the last minute. It would be best to produce it in advance of the shipment along with all the other documents. Interestingly, where a certificate of origin hasn't been produced on a timely basis, it can be requested retrospectively, although it may be that whilst the certificate of origin is being produced, the goods concerned may be incurring some sort of storage charges. Yes. I'm not sure whether I've just answered all of the question there, Tudor, or not.
I don't know. We'll find out from Sam. Sam, you're on the call. I can see you there on our attendees list. Do you want to just come off mute and just let us know if we've answered the question, okay, or if there's more you'd like to find out?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, when the hauliers or couriers ask for documents, they're asking for variations of what we're actually told is legislation now. And one of those things, one thing that we get particularly from Holland, is that we need the invoice number. So what we was trying to find out, is there a set format? We understand, the weights, etc. But it seems to be different. And then what will happen is one haulier will ask for it in a specific way, whereas the other will ask for it. And there's a difference, which is very time consuming.
And very frustrating too. It's something we're coming across, and I think because some hauliers have really got into the whole notion that they now need to sort of take on this additional role of acting as a customs agent, sort of sort of handling all the expert. Others, bless them, are clueless, in short, and sort of basically sort of say, well, what am I being asked for? Well, I'll just pass that on to the client. And that we're coming across, and I think we're alluding to that earlier in the call, where we've got a lot of different levels of knowledge and understanding. I guess we as a chamber, of course, we like to think that we have the right answer, but we would say that, wouldn't we? But yeah, it is very, very frustrating. It's very difficult. Graham, you mentioned this earlier about that sort of frustration of some hauliers asking for this. I'm going to sort of stick my neck out a little bit and say, because the Chambers of Commerce have been doing this for donkey's years, we are probably quite confident we're saying, well, this is the right way to do it. Is that too bold a statement, do you think, or are we?
It's probably about right, but we are all learning at the moment. Just picking up on one thing that was said, reference to invoice number. Invoice number, really, it's just about the individual company that's moving the goods is expected to have their own process, whether the invoice number starts at 001 or whatever, so that, and if you think of the basics of running that sort of operation, if you've got, dare I suggest it in this conversation, if you've got a customs audit, it's quite reasonable for the customs representative who comes into your office to ask for your ledger of, which probably on a computer these days, but your ledger of all your details of the various different invoice numbers. So you would probably, as a matter of routine, have an invoice numbering system. So and it's entirely logical to refer to the invoice number on the certificate of origin as part of the description. That it is something that makes a lot of sense.
But there isn't a specific box for it on the certificate of origin, though, is it? It's not. It just needs to be listed in the product description.
But in some cases, it can be a part of the product description. To come then onto the what's needed. I'm a great advocate of the various organisations that provide I'm struggling not to use the word Bible. There I am. I've just used it, trying to keep it religious. But there are various different organisations that will give you chapter and verse on what you need for every country you export to. Up until recently, export into Europe meant that there was one set of rules for all of those European countries. Now it's being broken down into the separate countries needing separate requirements. The Chamber makes that sort of information available. I make that sort of information available. If someone calls me and says, Graham, I've got a shipment to go to Austria, for instance, could be any country, but I've just used Austria as my example. I'm happy to go through the listed requirements, updated as they are now for Austria, which will include, if there's a particular reference to a clause that's needed for goods going into Austria, that will my advice will include that clause. These sorts of information are available for approaching but less than £1,000 annual subscription, so they tend to be within the range of a lot of international traders, but maybe outside of the range of some of the very smaller international traders. But that information is available through the Chamber. The Chamber office have got access to it. I have, as a contractor to the Chamber, got my own access to that sort of information as well.
Sometimes I think, Sam, if you get stuck, we do find, and again, that's why I'm sort of sticking my neck out and being a bit bold, really. Sometimes saying, well, we've checked with the Chamber of Commerce and this is what they've told us. And that normally carries a bit of clout, that they should be happy because we're, as I say, we're the ones that invented Incoterms and other bits and pieces like that. So if you have difficulty with a haulier that they're insisting on certain things, and by all means, we're happy to sort of to go to bat for you. I think you were members, you are members, I can't remember now, but it's something that you're more than welcome to give us a call and say, this is what I'm being asked for, is this correct? And you can go back to them with what we believe to be the definitive answer. Does that help, Sam? Is there anything else that we can help you with whilst you're on the call here? Sam, you still there? On mute.
Oh, hello, hi.
There you go.
Sorry.
Gotcha. That's all right.
Apologies. No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, that will
Okay.
definitely help. We're going to have a look at your course as well. So yeah, great.
Yeah, please do. I think we've helped you in quite a bit in the past. I think because you're in Aylesford, aren't you? And you
Yeah, that's right.
that's right. Do you still have the factory over in Holland at the moment? Is that still there?
No, we are now owned by Swagon.
Ah, yes, that was it.
Yeah. So we've had lots of changes. So yeah.
I'm sure. All right. Well, brilliant. Well, we're here to help you. So please do get in touch.
Yeah,
But great.
Could I add, Tudor?
Yeah.
Every now and again, I need to go up the line myself. There's actually a very good organisation behind us, which you'll probably all be aware of, called the British Chambers of Commerce. And a few days back, I had one that I was really struggling with. So I approached one of the guys who is very high up in the trade area within the British Chambers of Commerce. So usually, if we can't get the answer locally, we can usually get it somewhere. So we'll always do our best to try and find the answer for you.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Sam. Thank you for joining us this morning. Okay, I'm going to come across to you, Sue. Here's an interesting one, another service-based question. So this is from Peter Northfield from Arpenter Design. How do I charge for an online maintenance fee of £25 per month for a website owned by French company, but with actual work happening in the UK?
Well, can you say that one again for me?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
How do I
charge for an online maintenance fee of £25 per month for a website owned by a French company, but with actual work happening in the UK? So the website's owned by the French company, but this guy is doing online maintenance for it. So he's providing this online service from the UK, charges £25 a month. How does he bill?
Okay, so we're back to this general rule that I gave earlier, where if you're a UK business and you're billing a non-UK business for a service, and that includes maintenance of a website like this, then those sorts of services should be outside the scope of UK VAT, which means you don't charge any UK VAT, and your French customers should account for French VAT under this reverse charge rule that I mentioned earlier. So I recommend when you're issuing an invoice, you should put the French company's VAT number on your invoice. So ask them for their VAT number, record it on your invoice, and you can put outside the scope of UK VAT, and then the words reverse charge applies or something similar, subject to reverse charge, something like that, as long as you use those words reverse charge. And then that means that you're not charging UK VAT, but the service is taxed in France. So it's like a simplification. But it still means it doesn't affect your ability to recover VAT on your costs. You still get to recover all the VAT on the costs of your business.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm just going to come across to now Sinclair and Rush. Natalie, so you're on the call as well. You have a question in here. So we have some customers that we deliver to central logistics hubs for them, which may be in a different country to the bill address. How can we get around this? It seems that DHL and FedEx can do this. However, our pallet courier cannot. Graham, you were talking about this earlier about the address issues, weren't you? About was it Nathan? I can't remember now. One of you could.
It was Graham.
It was Graham. Graham, do you want to just come back on this one? So this is for Natalie at Sinclair and Rush. Fantastic
Natalie,
in plastic.
Yes. Hello, Natalie. I've had a conversation with one of Natalie's colleagues, Louise, within the last day or two, and we've actually arranged. I think, without looking at my diary, I think we've got a Zoom on Thursday or Friday, something like that. I'm actually working on this at the moment, and the initial observation is that the carriers need to get real and understand that sometimes the party buying the product isn't domiciled in the same country as the party receiving the product. But that's maybe a dangerous way to put it, because I'm still gathering all the facts on this, but it is one of those peculiarities. I do believe that to some extent the TCA, Trade and Cooperation Agreement, was put together based upon the kind of broad view that goods leave the UK and get exported to one place in Europe, or they come from one place in Europe and come to the UK, and that's a bit of an oversimplification compared with what really is happening now. I am actually working in the background on this, which is why I made reference to it. It's an ongoing project for me, which I'm hoping to have a bit more information for when Sinclair and Rush and I get together at the end. I think it's at the end of this week.
Excellent. Okay, so Natalie, some more information to come on that one, but you've got Graham working on the problem already. Thank you, Graham.
Can I just
Yeah,
add on that one
please
from
do,
a VAT
yes.
point of view, that don't forget the VAT issue. So if in this sort of instance you're billing, for example, a French entity but delivering to a logistics hub in the Netherlands or something like that. So don't, obviously if you use DDP, you've got a problem for your Incoterms, but assuming you don't, then you use your customer's EU EORI number, but the French company will be responsible for the import into the Netherlands, so will need to be registered for VAT in the Netherlands in order to make that import. So it has VAT issues as well arising. So happy to be involved in that discussion, Graham, at another time.
Okay, thank you both very much. I'm going to go to a live chat question from Monica J. So this is in relation to long-term supplier declarations, which obviously are in place for those that have been doing things for a long time. Will the wording preferential origin on our declaration have to change to non-preferential origin, even if our manufacturing process has not changed? So I guess simple question, long-term supplier declarations, do they stay the same or do they change? Any thoughts? Who wants to have a shot at that one?
I'm currently working on long-term supplier declarations, Tudor. It's we're waiting on a clarification in some cases exactly how the wording should appear. My view is, my humble view, perhaps I should say, is that we do still have a preferential situation in the UK, in that we have a trade and cooperation agreement with Europe, but we're just waiting for some clarification on exactly wording in terms of long-term supplier declarations. But essentially, the long-term supplier declaration is about confirming that the goods are in free circulation in a particular area. So if we're talking about a product that is from the UK and is going to somewhere in Europe, in my view, there is a free circulation situation in the UK. There's a trade and cooperation agreement between the UK and Europe, so it should be something that we can get resolved, but it seems to be dragging on a bit.
Okay, so the jury's still out on that one, Monica J. We're still looking into it. Again, more than welcome to drop us a line and sort of arrange time to sort of try and follow up on that. Ellen's posted a mess question as well. I'm just wondering, Ellen, are you the same Ellen from Scarab Sweepers by any chance? So whilst we're waiting for Ellen just to respond to that, I will go to the Scarab Sweepers.
Yes, I am.
You are. Hi, Ellen. So we were working our way through the list there. So I've got a couple of questions for you. The one I'll read, which was submitted earlier. So in origin terms, what takes precedence? Change of tariff code through processing, etc., or max nom rules, NOM rules? Change of tariff code. So who wants to have a shot at that one first? Graham. Sue's
Not
Graham,
me.
not you. Okay.
I was, funnily enough, I just clicked on unmute, but I was already unmuted, so I muted myself.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. Go on then. Can you come to Ellen's rescue here?
The answer is that we need to look at individual items. Now, obviously, with Scarab Sweepers, there was, I guess, the main item is the sweeper, but there's a lot of other items which may be spare parts for said sweeper, and there will be a lot of different tariff numbers that apply for the overall range of products that you may be selling. The max nom rules are about the maximum amount of non-country origin manufacture that can be allowed. So It depends upon the product. We need to look at the individual tariff numbers. Different industries, you may have heard the one that made the news was the van industry in the UK is allowed to call a product 100% UK origin, even though none of the product has come from the UK. So there are various different individual negotiations that have happened, but essentially the origin is probably the most challenging aspect of the whole trade situation we've got. And maybe the major caveat to put into the conversation about origin is that it's about the individual traders' interpretation of the rules. So as long as you've gone through the rules and you've applied, you've gone through a thorough process, and you can show an audit trail that where you've applied what you believe makes sense to your product, that is the best that you can do. It's impossible for there to be an absolute set of rules worldwide for every single product that ever moves. The tariff, as we know it, comes as close as you can to that, but it will always be from time to time subject to interpretation. So what we need to do is look at the individual items and calculate what percentage of the manufacturer is, for instance, in the UK, what percentage of an assembly, what value was added, and a whole range of different things. So everything all becomes bespoke. Actually, everything is about making an understanding of each individual situation. I guess your additional challenge is that you're owned, I believe you'll probably still be owned by the same French parent group, and so there's French rules to consider as well as British rules. But I'm happy to have an in-depth conversation about your specific situations and work out when max norm applies and when it doesn't.
You've got another question on here, Alan, which from the chat, which I'm going to say, which is, we import some item parts from the EU, which we know, we're therefore liable for duty on re-import on the EU by customers. Would returned goods relief be possible for them in these situations? If not, what options could we consider to mitigate this? Return goods relief. Sue, is that a tax question?
It's probably a question for Sue, because she's made reference already to the IPR and the OPR rules, and there's a wide range of duty suspensions, which I'm sure she'll make some reference to.
Over to you then, Sue.
I'm sorry, I do apologise. I wasn't listening.
That's okay. So that's fine. It's in the chat. Yeah, of course. It's a marathon. This is a 2-hour session, so we're probably all flagging a little bit, but hopefully we're getting the answers to you that need. Not a problem. So this is from Ellen at Scarab Sweepers. We import some items parts from the EU, which are therefore liable for duty on re-import to the EU by customers. Would returned goods relief be possible for them in these situations? If not, what options could we consider to mitigate this?
Oh, okay, yeah. So yes, so we want one of the duty reliefs here to operate, because without it, when you import the goods from the EU, then there's duty when they come in, and then when they go back out to the EU, there's duty when they go into the EU, assuming, of course, that these goods are not UK or EU origin, because then they would be covered by the free trade agreement that we have with the EU. So I think we would need to know a bit more about what's happening with these goods. So if they're coming in from the EU into the UK, are you doing some sort of process to them, Ellen, within the UK, and then they are going back out to the EU? Because if that were the case, then something like inward processing relief would work well. So they would be relieved from duty when they come into the UK, and as long as you can show that they've been exported back out of the UK, then there's no duty in the UK. And from the EU, outward processing relief could be used. So, for example, if something's coming, I've got a client at the moment I'm dealing with, they're sending, their customers are sending something into the UK for a process to be applied, and then they go back out again. So it's from Ireland, we would have OPR in Ireland and IPR into the UK in order to prevent duty being payable there.
So can I just clarify, these
yes,
parts
please.
are parts that we've brought in that are spare parts. We would use them in the build of a machine, but they might also be processed as spare parts, as in sent out as they are to replace something. And our customers in the EU have told us that they've been charged duty on them because they're EU origin, so they've left the EU and gone back in.
So they shouldn't be charged duty if they're EU origin goods, though. Do you mean has the origin of them changed?
No, they've been told that they've been charged duty on them.
Okay, well, that shouldn't really happen. I would need to unpick that a bit more to kind of find out what sort of parts they are. I mean, what is it, machinery or equipment?
It's spare parts, so it could be any. I wouldn't be able to give you a specific one, but it would be any parts that we've sold to them as spares. But it's specific that our customers told us that they've been charged duty on them because they're re-imports.
Okay, but they are originally of UK origin, are they, these parts, or of EU origin?
EU origin originally.
Okay, then I'm afraid I don't know why that would be. I don't think that should be the case. It sounds like something's gone wrong there.
It could be one of those situations, Ellen, we were discussing earlier, where there is a sort of distinct lack of understanding, and so rules are being applied which shouldn't be, rather like the Spanish inquiry we had earlier, where actually we need to sort of try and find ways of going back to your clients, so that empower them, or keep them informed, so they can obviously talk. Just out of interest, what was the sort of location that was of the client? Whereabouts were they? Which EU state?
They're in France.
In France. Oh, ironic. Okay, because it probably came from there in the first place, didn't it? I think possibly. Yes. Okay, Ellen. I think maybe there's a follow-up call to be had here in a bit more detail, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, give us a call on that number, Ellen, and we can talk it through.
Thank you. So I keep muting myself in between, so you can't hear me responding to you.
I know.
Thank you.
That's okay. That's all right. We appreciate it. I'm sure there's a few people chomping down on toast or something in the background there, so it's always nice not to have that going on as well. Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, and then thank you, Sue and Graham, for coming back on that question. Right, I'm going to go back.
Tudor, could I just say, just to sort of add to Ellen's comments, and also to pick up on what and underline what Sue said, really, we got a trade and cooperation agreement, which means that goods can move freely between UK and Europe pretty much as often as you like, subject to things like customs entries. So there are additional costs involved, apart from transport. There's documentation costs, but it should be possible for goods to move between France and UK and France without duty, according to what the rule book's telling us. So yeah, as Sue said, phone in that number, and there's a lot of advice available.
Okay, that's great. Now, one of the questions we were asked to hold back was for Joe Miles at Maidstone Aquatics. Joe was going to be joining us, and I can see you're on the call now, Joe, so welcome. And the question really is, will we be informed, and by whom, if we owe customs duty? We have filled in the forms as we import fish and live birds or reptiles. So, Graham, I've got this down for you initially. So if we owe customs duty, so we filled in the forms as we import fish and live birds or reptiles. Now, Joe's on the call here, so maybe do you need a bit more elaboration on that?
No, based upon what you've said, then if you don't pay customs duty and you've declared for customs duty, you will, I would expect you will be informed, because someone will come after you for the money. In terms of how it works, I'm just wondering whether these are live animals that come from outside of Europe, because if it's an animal that's come from within Europe, then there wouldn't be any customs duty on that animal coming into the UK, although it would be subject to declaration in the normal way. So to be honest, it's probably best that we have a conversation offline. Most of what we're doing is the Zoom type call, where we sit down face to face, as it were, screen to screen, and understand the logistics of how businesses are working, so that we can then guide you more specifically. So we can ask some more questions now. I'm probably going to have to go away and look up the answer anyway.
They actually come in from Czechoslovakia.
There you go. Hello, Joe.
Hello there. Hello. Yeah, we import quite a bit in from Czechoslovakia. It's mainly fish. And we filled all the forms in, declared the company that we purchased them from, and sent all the forms back. But we have had absolutely nothing back in writing. And we're concerned that we may have a duty somewhere that we may be racking up that we don't know about.
So who did you get the forms from? For whom? Where did you fill those in?
They came in from Customs and Excise. And we had to, obviously, we declared it. It said, "Are you an importer?" Which we are. And then obviously we declared it, gave the registration details and everything of the company that we buy from in Czechoslovakia, sent all the forms back, and then have had absolutely nothing since. But we buy in regularly, and it can be anything from 500 to over £1,000 a week. So
sorry, go on. I thought you'd finished.
Yeah, and it's in fish and small birds, and it's mainly in fish, but we have also bought in small birds and mammals, I think.
So somebody somewhere should be doing a customs declaration for you. Am I right, Graham?
Yeah, yes, there's basically.
And I'm not sure where that's happening yet.
Yeah, there needs to be an import customs declaration because you are importing from Czechoslovakia. In terms of duty specifically, if we're talking about animals that are of Czech Republic. Sorry, did you say Czechoslovakia?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're either talking about Slovakia or Czech Republic, that sort of area. So basically, we're talking about EU. So you're bringing an EU item in, although it will also be important what origin is declared on the commercial invoice for the fish or the bird or birds that you're bringing in.
Yeah.
Because if they've acquired those fish from somewhere outside of the European Union, then we may have a whole different situation. So two things.
Yeah.
One is I wouldn't ever profess to be an expert on imports of fish, but I'm useful enough to help work with you on arriving at an answer and working on the contacts that we have to try and come up with the right answer for you.
Can I just ask about the terms under which you're buying these things? Have they agreed that your supplier will be taking care of the customs declarations, or have you got Incoterms in place?
Yes, we pay. Obviously, we pay up front. So we pay up front. You put your order in, we pay up front. They write to you back saying we have these fish in stock, etc. And then they sort of turn up. But on the forms, it said that we had to fill in for obviously the full address and the importer, who we were actually importing them from. Which we did, and then we obviously sent them all back and everything, but we have heard absolutely nothing back at all. Nothing.
No. Now, see, the situation that's in place is that if goods are moving backwards and forwards between the UK and the EU, then customs declarations is now an additional burden that everyone has to sort of bear. Now, what happens is you argue as to who pays it, if you like, who does the paperwork preparation, all that sort of stuff. But as far as we're aware, what you've probably done is filled in the paperwork for one consignment, and that's now sat languishing somewhere in someone's in tray waiting to be dealt with. If you're doing stuff on a weekly basis, again, I'm looking at Graham to see if he's got a nod or a shake of his head here. I think you're going to need to sort of get a sort of more regular customs declaration and process in place for all the consignments that come in.
Yeah, Graham? But I think Tudor, the key question which you've asked already is what are the Incoterms that apply, and we haven't really got that answer at this stage.
No, I don't know if it's 2020 or 2010.
Well, you can agree whatever Incoterms that you wish to agree with your supplier. You can You can agree to work with your supplier on 2010 if you want, although it's more normal to be looking to agree 2020 terms these days. Or you can even agree prior to 2010. but nevertheless, the bit that everyone understands, the bit that customs officers are going to understand at the moment, is going to be 2020 Incoterms, because they're the ones that are currently recommended by the International Chambers of Commerce. So referring back to what Tudor's already said, if for instance your supplier in the Czech Republic is sending the consignment to you on a delivered duty paid basis, then that your supplier is going to become the importer of record in the UK, and so they would have to account for any duty and taxes that may apply. Chances are they may, I would expect they're probably not going quite that far, although with live animals they may well do, because it's about husbandry as well as all of other things as well. So you need to clarify, and I'm happy to have a conversation with this separately with you. You need to clarify the Incoterms so you can then work out where delivery technically takes place, where risk is assumed by you, where they hand over, etc., etc. But in terms of the main question you asked, if the fish is actually Czech fish coming to the UK, it shouldn't be duty payable on Czech fish, because there's a trade and cooperation agreement that the fish should be able to move from the UK, from Czech to the UK without paying any duty.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point to emphasise, really. If anything, it's a case of who's paying to do the declaration, that bit of administration, rather than if there's any duty to pay. So hopefully, I think you could probably be a little bit more relaxed about whether or not you're going to get a bill suddenly out of the blue, because as long as the goods are coming from within the EU, you should be fine. Okay.
Can
Joe,
I just ask?
Yeah, of course.
On that point, importing, we also import koi in from Japan. Does that affect us either, or not really?
It will affect you. Once again, it'll be a question of what the delivery terms are, the Incoterms. But my comments about duty won't apply to Japan in the same way that they did apply to Czech Republic. For obvious reasons, Japan is not a part of the EU trade and cooperation agreement with the UK. Although there may be other agreements. I'd need to look it up and find out what the duty situation would be.
Thank you. They're nice fish.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's brilliant, Joe. Thank you very much. And again, you've got the number. We keep publishing in the chat there. You can give us a call 0333 602 300, and you can book a bit more time with either of these guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I'm just going to answer a couple of questions which just have cropped up because there is, where is it now? Yeah, Chris Bartram of CDS has sort of raised the whole, has Brexit actually been done despite the oven-ready claims? Yeah, there's some politics here, obviously. And there's a couple of questions we've had in advance. The Oak and Rope Company asked about, does the government have any plans to help small businesses cover the loss of income due to increased cost of shipping to Europe? I guess I think we talked about this at the top of the meeting. The trade deal that has been done with the EU was only ever going to be a backward step in terms of ease of movement of products, so frictionless trade. It was always going to be backwards, because you can't sort of unravel 40 years of harmonization without there being some disruption. So what will happen now is there will be two aspects to this. One will be there will be a real movement and real rush on simplification of processes, of technology to playing a bigger part. We'll see more smart and clever software where it'll make it a lot easier for people to actually undertake these processes. The processes will stay. They're not going to disappear, because that's part of the deal, that we stepped away from that, and therefore we're like any other country now. And so we'll need to sort of carry that burden of doing the paperwork. The second thing that will start to materialize is there's potentially a risk for a little bit more horse trading. And by that, I mean, if we fall out with the EU for whatever reason, or of course the Northern Ireland issue is carrying on at the moment, there is a possibility that they decide they're actually going to start to enforce quotas or tariffs or insist on certain checks, or refuse to recognise certain professional qualifications. And unfortunately, those are the sort of little tit-for-tat things that go on with every country in the world that we have a trade deal with. You know, this is where you sort of try and get these agreements in place to try and harmonise some of that stuff. If you don't have a trade deal, then we are subject to all sorts of disruption and ebb and flow in the terms. What that means, I guess, is that experts like you have aligned in front of you today are going to get busier. You as businesses will need to add to your staffing function, if you like. It's no longer just a case of having HR, finance, marketing, sales, production. You're going to need to have an import-export department, potentially. If that's a regular part of your business, you're going to need to sort of look at having either someone within the organization that can get themselves clued up on that sort of thing. And again, you know, we do training and stuff, or you lean on someone like the chamber or one of the other experts around to sort of try and help you navigate your way through that. That's going to be the way things are. And business will continue to be disrupted for a little while as we sort of settle into the new order. It will not be for the better, I think. The better elements or the benefits of Brexit, I think, will come later once we've managed to sort of adjust to this new relationship. And it's like anything, it takes a period of settling in. There'll be some good things, there'll be some bad things, but eventually we'll get into some sort of rhythm. And at that point, any benefits that are there will start to become more apparent. So that's a sort of a slightly political view. Are there any more funds to come down the line? Not a huge amount. I think what we've seen is a shift from providing funding to offer free advice to now providing funding for grants, which can be used for free advice. Now, what that tells me, in my years of knowledge, is that this is a shift of the government saying, right, we've sort of done our bit to help you. Now we're handing you over to the private sector to take care of things. In other words, we're going to give you a little bit of grant money to help pay for that. But once that grant money is finished, you'll be expected to pay for that support and advice yourself. They will definitely not be replacing any loss of income, unfortunately. That is just not going to happen. So there's no point having any false hopes on that. What they will do is just try and make sure that they have got the political environment set correctly. And of course, they have their hands full trying to deal with that at the moment, still trying to resolve the whole Northern Ireland border issue and how that's going to play out. So yeah, there's no sort of silver lining to the cloud on this one. Unfortunately, it is going to be a bit tough. But you know, again, like anything, get educated, bring yourself up to speed, get some knowledge on the matter, get to grips, take a hard look at whether or not it is still viable in some cases to continue with your current business model or to use your current supply chains or markets. Take a look to see whether or not it works. There are other ways of doing things. You know, it doesn't have to be all down the one route, but it's frustrating and annoying, but it is here to stay. So, and we'll do what we can to try and navigate you through this as best we can. Okay, right. Moving on. So question here from Normal. Okay, whoever Normal is. Hello, Tudor. Can you please advise us whether a UK supplier of plant-based products, brackets T, of non-EU origin has to get a new phytosanitary certificate from the EU supplier for whom they are purchasing it from? Is it the responsibility of the EU supplier to supply the certificate free of charge? Sounds like it could be an Incoterms question. Who wants to stick on first?
Yeah, it's phytosanitary, Tudor. It's about exporting plant-based products. Would need to have a conversation so that I can understand the situation better. As a matter of interest, I am currently working with a company that packages plant-based material that they've imported from a variety of countries around Europe and also outside of Europe, and working with them on what they can declare as UK origin and what they can't. I haven't come across the phytosanitary question with them, so it probably comes back to what I've been saying a lot today, which is let's sit down, understand your business, what it is you're bringing in, what it is you're sending out, what process you're adding, and then look at the documents that will be needed. the main key is if you know what your tariff number is, if you've already decided the tariff number that refers to your product, or indeed your supplier will have declared the tariff number for the goods to get to you, then that gives a very good indication of whether there's any sort of certification required anyway, because the tariff number is the key to opening up all that sort of information.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, D. Graham. Thanks for that. Anything to add?
There's another question. I don't mean to break in now.
Not at all. No. The importer of records.
Yeah, I'm happy to return to that in a moment, but let's make sure we've answered this one properly.
We'll jump in there now. So Ashley Carey was asking about, could we get a clearer definition of importer of records?
Yeah, I mean, Sue will probably have a comment on this as well, but as I see it, it's about really who's going to have responsibility for accounting for tax and VAT at destination. It all revolves around that. So it comes back to Incoterms, those lovely things that we keep talking about. It's who has taken responsibility for delivering the goods, either to be declared for tax or to be a status tax paid. So if you're delivered duty paid, then you, the supplier, are technically the importer of record into the country of destination. But if you're short of delivered duty paid, the next one short of that being delivered at place, then although you are sending the goods and you are making sure that the goods arrive at the destination, you're not taking on the job of accounting for tax and VAT, duty and VAT at the country of destination. So the importer of record in that case would be your ultimate customer. So basically, importer of record really refers to who's got to worry about declaring, who's got to worry about accounting for tax and duty in the country of destination. Simple as that.
Excellent. Sue, anything to add on that, or does that cover it all, do you think?
No, I thought that was a perfect answer.
Oh, Graham, there we go. No, brilliant. Okay, well, I'm just watching the clock. It's 12:29 according to mine. We have been at it now for a good couple of hours, and I think we have done a tremendous job there, everybody. I'm just checking through to make sure we haven't missed any questions.
Could I add one further thing, Tudor?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, just comment right at the bottom, from normal to me.
Yes.
Yes.
That's fine.
You can get the best way to do it is to use the contact number that's been given, and then it'll be referred to me within a matter of hours.
Yeah, 0333 602 300. What happens is that you'll get answered by one of the very lovely people at the Growth Hub. Will say, "Can I take your details?" You'll hand over sort of a short biography of yourself, and then they will book a call for Graham to give you a ring back, and then obviously you can go into more detail there. So that's perfect. Excellent. Yes, nice to see you, Chris. Thank you very much for joining us. Just a quick one here. So about the Kent access permit, and has the 17 on board. Right. So Ashford Maidstone residents in mind. Has the Kent access permit been well received? And has the Sevington inland border facility fully operational? Is there any plans for the N22 return to normal? The answer to that is yes, and it has begun. So there is a particular resilience forum, which is chaired by Barbara Cooper at KCC, I believe. And essentially they are working together with the police and customs and the Port of Dover and Eurotunnel to sort of basically phase the changes out slowly. So the intention is, I think they're already starting to wind down Manston. So that's sort of gone to the side. Sevington is due to be online and operational from July, but I don't think any of us believe that's really going to be the case. It's going to take a little bit longer. Yeah, at that point, they will sort of start to see the Operation Brock get removed. Now, the deciding factor there is obviously COVID testing. That's one of the things that sort of really slowed the traffic down. The paperwork issues haven't actually been that big a problem for the movement backwards and forwards, because the vehicles haven't actually been leaving. They haven't got the paperwork, they haven't left. So the COVID testing has been the main delay and cause of any queuing and issues. There are a couple of easements that come to an end in April and July, which may have an impact on the movement of goods and vehicle movements throughout the county. So what the resilience group are doing is they're sort of analysing that at each stage, but there is a phased plan to sort of try and remove all of that based on those variables which I've just mentioned. So hopefully that'll answer your question. Hannah has asked a quick question. I'm getting a quick one in here. Graham Morris, all the questions previously sent by all these. So Graham, you've asked about all your questions that have been sent by email. Let me get your question then, Graham. Let me find, here you go. Graham, right, so this is Graham Morris's question. Since 1st of January, we've provided more detail in our commodity codes on our invoices. And in this period, we've had a freight forwarding company hold up our equipment en route to query a code as it seemed to be dual use. And they requested details of any export license we had. Interesting. This is Graham Morris from C-Scope. So we might be sort of just people getting a bit anxious about export control orders and whether or not a commodity code is possibly falling foul of that. Graham, do you want to have a quick shot at that one for us?
Yeah, there is a dual use declaration process. I think I saw this. This was one of the ones that came in advance.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. The first thing I would say is I wouldn't hold it against the freight forwarder for holding up the process. They were just looking to try and do the right thing by the law, as it were. If there is any suspicion or any way that it is suspected that dual use or potentially dual use items need some sort of declaration, then it would be incumbent on the freight forwarder to make that to make it aware to customs or whoever. Having said that, if your products aren't dual use, it ought to be covered by the tariff number that you're using. If there is any issue with the tariff number, if you don't have dual use products but the tariff number keeps referring you back to dual use, I would suspect it may be a question of going down the route of a binding tariff agreement with HMRC. On that basis, you approach HMRC, you say, look, here's a sample, here's a picture, here's a description, here's a brochure, here is the products that we've sent in a bubble wrap bag or whatever. You could do all of those things. You can say to customers, we're having issues with this, it's not dual use, this is the reason it's not dual use. Can we have a binding customs agreement on what the tariff number should be that we use? And customs will not only agree a binding tariff decision for you, but it will also then be a decision that applies worldwide, not just in the UK.
So binding tariff agreement, is that the word?
Oh, sorry, binding tariff decision. Yeah,
binding tariff decision.
But yeah.
Okay, excellent, and apply to HMRC for that. And hopefully, I think, again, there's going to be an element, Graham Morris, I'm afraid there will be an element where new staff are taken on board with hauliers, having to deal with this stuff where they didn't have to. I know in the past it was literally just sort of added on as a surcharge and a rubber stamp, and no one actually did any paperwork. Some hauliers now are sort of employing people, and there's an element of settling in again, getting people organised. But yeah, binding tariff decision is probably the way to go for your particular product. Hopefully, then, whether or not if you're using the same hauliers, of course they'll get familiar with it, and it won't be such an issue. But using a variety of hauliers obviously may give rise to that same issue for a little bit longer yet. Okay, there was a couple of other questions here. So.
There's one here from Hannah.
Yeah, just going to do the Crawford one first because they submitted their question earlier. What I was doing, I was just surfing through to see who had asked the question earlier and who was actually on the call, just to try to make sure we got through everybody. So Rob Crawford's question from Big Jig Toys down in Folkestone there. What declarations do we have to make as an exporter of non-excise goods to Northern Ireland with pallets and parcels for goods staying in Northern Ireland? Sue.
Yeah, so I thought we'd get to Northern Ireland at some point. I mean, this is extremely difficult at the moment, trying to advise businesses how to send goods to Northern Ireland and how to send goods to Ireland, Republic of Ireland via Northern Ireland. But my best advice is to register for the Trader Support Service that HMRC has set up because that will help you to make the declarations that you need to make for sending goods into Northern Ireland. Because we have to remember that for VAT and duty purposes for the EU, Northern Ireland is part of the EU, so you have to make declarations for your goods going into Northern Ireland, you know, you have to state whether they're moving into the EU or whether they're staying in Northern Ireland. So best advice, go onto the Trader Support Service, sign up for that, and use that advice to inform what you need to do for goods that stay in Northern Ireland.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And now we're going to go to Hannah's question, and this will be the last one for us today. So how does it work if we are transferring items from the EU to the UK to provide a service and then returning to the EU? For example, if a customer in Dublin had a historic motorbike that could not be repaired in Ireland and had to be transported to the UK to be repaired, what paperwork would we need? Would there be any duties to pay? And would this be as discussed before IPR?
Yeah.
Sorry, Sue.
Go on, Graham.
No,
Graham, you're in there. Go on, Graham.
that's all right. I was expecting to be called on for the Northern Ireland question, but Sue gave a very thorough answer to that one.
There
so
you go.
I
Excellent.
kind of left myself unmuted. Yeah, I mean it basically, well, they've referred to it, the IPR rules. Sue, I'm sure will concur, but I don't want to assume that. If goods are coming into the UK for repair, you don't want to pay duty on that, so it'll be about declaring a value for customs purposes. They're probably going to be either personal effects or a commercial repair that's being conducted, and then they need to go back out to Ireland again, presumably. So it's about having duty, any duty situation, not exactly suspended, just done away with by the fact that it's just coming in for repair. So I think it is IPR, isn't it, Sue?
I think so, yeah. In that sort of situation, OPR probably out of Ireland, IPR into the UK, and then you wouldn't pay any duty. Yeah. So we've seen so much more use of these schemes now, and if you're in this situation where you're having to move goods around between the UK and the EU and back again, then do get in touch. And if anything else has confused you about what we've said, because obviously, Tudor, the problem is that every situation is different. Every business.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been the biggest challenge, I think, for those of us that are sort of providing advice and information on this particular topic, is that you're right. It's first of all, it's been an absolute wonder and a marvel at how complex people's business arrangements can be sometimes, with products moving backwards and forwards and up and anything. Surely this can't make any money, but actually it does, because it works well. But yes, you're quite right. It then sort of means it's an incredibly bespoke and tailored solution in terms of what they do and don't need to do. And quite often, because it is such a complex, finely tuned business model, sometimes the smallest bit of incurred cost can actually knock that out of kilter. So, yeah, there's some considerations there. Just on Hannah's question, the declarations still need to take place, but I guess there's no duty to pay or anything. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. Under IPR, OPR, it's a much reduced system for making declarations and no payments to make.
Okay, so again, you're going to need someone to do that for you, but it's fairly painless once you've done it a few times. It's fairly straightforward. Okay, right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring things to a close there. Nathan, thank you very much. I know you didn't sort of get too much of an input there towards the end, but your information and the technicalities earlier, as ever, has been really, really good. Sue, thank you so much indeed for providing crystal-like clarity on some of the incredibly complex VAT issues that we have. Graham, as ever, thank you very much indeed for sort of stepping in and covering all of these complex customs arrangements that we seem to be sort of unearthing all the time, and providing a bit of insight as well.
Could I add something that I think is worth just
touching on? Please do.
This is verbal, of course, and it's not been put in the chat, but date for the diary, 14th of April, 13th of May and 9th of June are dates that we've reserved together with the Kent and Medway Growth Hub and the Kent Invicta Chamber to deliver courses, training, call it what you will, in terms of what is particularly cropping up at the moment to do with trade. And so I suspect the arrangements you mentioned in terms of government assistance will probably apply in those cases, but I can't guarantee that. But just make a note that to keep an eye open for the 14th of April, the 13th of May, and the 9th of June, and we will be putting something together that is specific and relates to what we're finding at the moment. And I don't doubt for 1 minute that will include Incoterms and also rules of origin.
Absolutely, Graham. Thank you for the timely reminder. The link for that grant is in there. Please do get in early, get your application sorted, and then you've got time to spend the money. Don't wait until you got the job. You'll miss it otherwise. But for now, thank you very much indeed to our panelists for their time and their expertise. Thank you again to all of you for some really detailed, great questions. If you've got any further inquiries, or you have something else crops up, or anyone else you know that needs a bit of help and is in trouble on this particular topic, again, 0333 602 300, and we'll do our best to help. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, have a very good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.